Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're doing well. I'm Abby. If you're new here, I document my life and travels and share a lot about journaling here on my channel. Today we have something a bit more personal for me, but this tote bag has all the notebooks that I've used to document my 4 years living here in Berlin. So I'm originally from Manila, Philippines, and I moved to Berlin around this time 4 years ago, February 2022. So I went through my archives and I thought it'd be nice to show you the different ways I've documented my life here. I've moved from one journal to another, moved from one apartment to another, and also allowed myself to find meaning into the different ways I capture my life in this city, because it's not really a trip, it's not a travel journal, it's also not necessarily like just because I'm here means I'll document it. There are some chapters of my life here that I felt that needed to be documented a certain way, and I thought it'd be nice to show you how I've done that. And before we continue, this video is kindly sponsored by Squarespace. More on that later. Also, we have a special guest. Everyone meet Gingy from Shrek. I have a new coworker. Gingy is always watching me work here. We're currently in my office. If you've been watching my videos for a while now, you'd know that I've been using Hobonichi Techo as like my main everyday journal. But before that, I actually had to improvise because a lot of my stationery were in Manila. I couldn't bring everything. So I started off with the first chapter. I feel like this was the part where I was readying myself to move here, and I didn't really do a lot of journaling. It felt more like a planning stage. So we start off with my traveler's notebook insert. This was actually gifted to me, and it was so fitting because it is an Ace Hotel collab, and the cover says "to begin." So I was like, okay, I think this is like a good omen to use. I use this as like my Bible, because as much as a lot of the documents I needed could be on my phone, like I could put it in a notes app, I felt like I needed like a tangible pocket notebook to see everything through. I also remember, coming in here, there were a lot of things that I needed to take note of. Like I had appointments for my visa, for my permit, for registering my apartment, and things like that. And I just wanted to have a solid space to be able to write those down. And I did write a lot here. It was also COVID at the time, so I needed to make sure all my documents were in check. Wow, I really wrote every single inventory of items I had brought with me, especially because it was wintertime and I wanted to make sure I had things I liked. I was very sentimental. I mean, I still am, but like, I think at the time I was just really kind of holding on to dear life because I had no idea what I was doing. I also wrote here like meeting notes, and a lot of these things you can find online, but I still wrote them down just because I wanted like a place, again, to have them in one notebook. So while I was cleaning my stuff earlier this month, I actually found this notebook in my drawers, and I was pretty shocked to see this page. It says Abby's Dream Apartment, and I already wrote some of the neighborhoods I wanted, and I ended up living in one of them right now. And the size of the apartment, I got a bigger one, but yeah, definitely at the time I thought big apartments were like daunting, but since I need an office, I think a bigger apartment was key. Sufficient light for filming, preferably first floor, second floor. Wow, she really knew what she was manifesting. Equipped kitchen. Okay, that one I didn't have, but decent bathroom. Manifesting. Love that. I love seeing this and feeling like I gave my past self a little bit of like justice and told her like, hey, you got what you wanted, so I hope you're happy. In conjunction with this notebook, I also needed to find some sort of like way to process everything. I mean, I have been chronically journaling and writing things down, but the new chapter didn't feel like a new chapter until the daily things started to happen. I remember the first week I moved, I went to Modular and I bought a Leuchtturm notebook, obviously because it's German. And this is still one of the notebooks that I don't really reread because it's a lot of heavy things, but it was one of the few things that have kept me sane, because imagine I didn't have any friends. The person who I was taking over a sublease for a few months, and she was traveling, that friend. I had no friends. I did not share a lot about it on social media because I wasn't sure if I was gonna get the permit because the first 3 weeks I was here, I was waiting for the final appointment, which was February 28th. And then I didn't know where else to share my frustrations with. I would call friends and family, but I think at the end of the day, I just needed to kind of process things on my own. And this became that medium. I remember writing a lot about things I rewatched. I also have written things about like waiting at the lawyer's office, thoughts about like current processes that felt really daunting. And I think it goes without saying that I was filled with a lot of anxiety when I first moved. I also tried to read up on notes on how to, process my anxiety. I wasn't going to therapy at this time because I had just moved. I needed to find a therapist here. I even wrote things like problems and possible solutions because I think there were a lot of circumstances that didn't really warrant an answer. I mean, technically, even the road that I'm treading on, I didn't know anyone who has had a freelance permit and get to live here, so it was very tricky at the time to kind of feel grounded and to know that it's possible. There was even like things like worrying about getting freelance gigs or actually wanting to do freelance because I wasn't sure if I actually wanted to do freelance. I used to run a shop, so I thought I would run a shop here, but turns out I didn't want to. And then solution, make a list of potential work, update website, write out plans for Q2 work-wise maybe. I feel like that first year was such an innocent year for me because I really needed to get my home life kind of orchestrated before making sure I could work. And I think the savings definitely helped me get by for a bit because then I didn't feel like, I needed to like do this and that. But yeah, moving is expensive, but this is crazy. Looking at these old entries, there was one I bookmarked. It's really interesting to read this like 4 years later. I'm not even sure I'm allowed to say this, but what did I just do and am I sure this is the right decision? I guess I'll find out in the next few months, but somehow thinking about just the idea of 3 years is sending me into a spiral of impending doom. Yeah, I'm now in my 4th year, so I think I am not in the spiral of impending doom, but also it's nice to look at these and remember who I was and how I've changed throughout the years. I don't remember if I kept some kind of similar notebook afterwards because this was something that I needed as like a processing tool. And then afterwards, I think after processing, I didn't feel the need to constantly have a space to write out my thoughts and feelings about moving. So apart from writing things down, I drew a lot and documented a lot. I even went as far as treating my first few months as like a trip. So this became kind of my travel journal because I felt like I was suspended in this idea of I was traveling because I had not traveled for like 3 years and then I went to Berlin. So everything felt like a first impressions kind of thing where it's like, oh my god, yeah, like the DHL packaging. I also kept the tickets and I went to museums. And I think the first 2 weeks I treated it as like me being a tourist because I didn't really know what kind of routine I would have. I think looking back was really a huge culture shock for me because a lot of things are very much accessible with walking. This craft insert was a fun little way to document the fun things that I did throughout the week. For example, I think this was in April. End of April, I went to this book festival and I got to meet Christoph Niemann, who's one of my idols, one of my inspirations. I have a lot of his books. I watch a lot of his shows, love his art, and he does open studios here in Berlin a couple times a year. Oh my god, Harry's house! This was when Harry's house had a pop-up here in Berlin, so obviously I documented that, and I think it was a nice little peek into what I was really fixated on around that time. One of my favorite movies, The Worst Person in the World, was also premiered around, I think this was June 2022. Really loved that movie and the director is really great. So once this finished, I don't have any specific like follow through because at the time I wasn't sure again what I was mainly doing. Like, did I journal? Did I write my plans? But I did keep a lot of drawings, which now reminded me of how much I miss drawing. So these two are my drawing books. I remember wanting to draw because it was a way for my anxiety to go away. Still is. It's like with this whole concept of you're looking at something right in front of you and you're wanting to pay attention because then you feel like you're so focused on what you have to draw that you don't need to think of anything else. I had this eureka moment a few years ago when I went to Italy and I was really, I think, spiraling in the train, and then I just took out my drawing book and I just started drawing, and I think that like flipped the switch in my brain saying like, you know, this really helps with your anxiety. So apart from anxiety, which I had really acquired around that time, I did acquire a regular drawing habit. I do miss this. I really loved black and white drawing because it was easy, no barriers. You simply get a black pen and you start drawing. I even had drawing dates with some friends before, or we would explore different parts of the city just so I could see different subjects and try to capture them. I think, yeah, these ones were from coffee shops. I also went to some touristy parts of Berlin. I also loved drawing packaging, showing off my grocery haul. And the reason I switched to black and white for this was because this is actually a watercolor insert from Traveler's Notebook. I don't like it as a watercolor insert. I think it doesn't capture the watercolor pigment so well. So I just decided to do black and white. And for a time, this became an avenue for my daily journaling / drawing. So I didn't really have a set journal to use for this matter. Also, I might add that around this time, I don't have that much stationery yet. And I was trying my best to not get too much of it because I was moving from one apartment to another. There was a bit of uncertainty with like the timelines. For example, one apartment we only had 3 months there and then we had to move to another one. So I tried my best not to accumulate stuff, and I think this method has definitely helped because all I needed was a pen. And I think I even bought more watercolor around that time because during my trips I would paint a lot. So I really miss that era. I feel like Abbey painting era has been kind of long gone, and I am on a mission to bring that back. Hopefully I will update you soon on that. So yeah, these are some of the pages also around summertime, you know, moving to a new apartment, and also drawing some of the outfits I have been wearing. This Clusia plant is the only plant that has survived all my moves. She's actually in the bathroom right now and she's pretty big. I'm so happy that she's still alive, but that's the first plant I ever bought myself since I moved. So I feel like it's long standing and I love that. Also, Christoph Niemann signed this. So apart from this one, I think I finished this around May. And then I didn't have any more space. I don't remember buying this specifically. I probably did in one of my first few visits to Moranga, but it was a continuation of the drawings here. So this is also May 2022. And I did not finish this. But one thing I did enjoy was I had been very fixated on drawing windows for a time. And I definitely did that in this particular sketchbook. So here are some windows and impressions from a weekend in Amsterdam. Around this time, I was also very much absorbed with the environment around me and going outside because the weather was starting to get warmer. It was gonna be my first summer in Berlin. I was also struggling with, honestly, living with my roommate. So I found ways to go outside as frequently as I can. She was really toxic. And I guess that was an incentive for me to go around the city. That being said, I did go around a lot. Like, this is Charlottenburg, this is around the west side. I kind of know most of the streets here. That's a random quirk that, I don't know, I kind of picked up along the way. I think I find interest in knowing where exactly I'm going, and even visually, like what the buildings look like, or which restaurant used to be in that corner, now it's a cafe, you know, things like that. I definitely had a whole period of trying to find my creativity and how to translate this because now that you're watching this, I kind of have things already set up, you know, like I make journaling content, I do Skillshare classes, I teach workshops, but this time I was really in this exploration phase. Like, did I like drawing? Did I like writing? I was very active with my newsletters at the time, and I was frequently by myself, so it was a good sort of introspective period. I also started meeting friends, but a lot of that kind of changed as the years went on. And damn, I miss drawing here. I really drew a lot. Like, from what I wore to where I went to, who I met up with. This notebook was a fun exercise in that because also it's very lightweight, and I love that it was spiral. Oh, this was also the era where I was watching a lot of movies, like a lot of movies. And I used to live in an area where the cinema was literally like 5 minutes away, and then another cinema was 10 minutes away. So I watched a lot. I watched The Worst Person in the World. I also probably I went to watch Elvis. I also went to open air kinos, which was like a fun activity we do in the summer where you can watch movies outdoors. And I was starting to find footing in hanging out with friends, co-working with friends. I also watched, wow, it's a very Harry Styles coded year, watched Love on Tour. And then I also had moved to another apartment, and I also had written a quote from the movie Come On, Come On, really nice movie. I tried updating it around 2023, but not as frequent. I only had this one as like probably one of my favorite spreads. But yeah, I really enjoyed this because it allowed me to take less photos and also really capture things on paper. Before we continue, I would like to thank Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Squarespace is the all-in-one website platform designed to help you stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just starting out or scaling your creative business, Squarespace gives you everything you need to claim your domain, showcase your product and service offerings with a professional website, and grow your brand and get paid all in one place. When I first moved to Berlin, the first thing I needed to do was actually work on my website, and that was around the time I started my Squarespace subscription. So I'm really happy to be working with them. Feels like a full circle moment. What I love about Squarespace is it's really easy to get your ideas across. There are lots of templates you can use for a jumping off point. I like to customize my website in a way that tells my story and needs to be communicated as easy and seamless as possible, and Squarespace does that so well. I also love that Squarespace is very SEO friendly. You know, you key in your words and also put in your website, and you can easily find it when you're searching online, which allowed me to be able to work with more clients and also make my discoverability easier on the internet. Now that I've been working freelance for a couple of years now, it's been easy to use Squarespace as my invoicing tool as well that I just send to clients. It's a very seamless process, and it allows me to focus on my creative work at hand. Head to squarespace.com/abc to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. In the years that followed, I had a lot of transformation happened to me. I also had a very tumultuous 2023, aka the start of my 30s. So I think this is when things started to really kind of come into fruition in terms of how I wanted to document my life around that time. I leaned a lot on this A5 journal. This is the Diarist. This is a journal I created. When I was home for a long time, I was home for 2 months, I decided to pick up a couple of my journals and was like, I'm gonna bring this here. So this contained a lot of processing and a lot of tarot readings. I still do tarot, but I don't log it as frequently as I used to. But this was also a good incentive because this time really permitted me to explore and experiment. And as you can notice, no dates yet. Like, all of my journals were undated, and I just enjoyed finding solace in that. I was also deep into kind of rediscovering myself again. That year, I went through a lot of friendship breakups. I went through a breakup. I had to move apartments. I got injured. And it was the start of slowly rising up from that and I guess redeeming myself. I felt like I had to be stronger around this time of my life and more in this season, like to trust the process. And this really had a lot of upper hand in helping doing that. And then around the summertime, this was actually when I started to document more frequently. and I used a lot of these dates that I tore off from the Daily Tearaway calendar. And this actually sparked the idea for me to do daily journaling, because I figured if I could write this much about a day, then if I do it every day for the rest of the year, I think it would be possible. I finished this journal up until autumn, and I really enjoyed it because around autumn, I had also started a tradition here because autumn is my favorite season. I had started a fall journal. This is my 2024 one. It's a passport size. I didn't want to overcomplicate it. I had wanted to just document the small things that made my autumn season count, like friends visiting, and also a way for me to just indulge in like enjoying the season and like the things I've been kind of obsessed with at that time. Like, yeah, look at this speculoos cheesecake and Canal eclairs. I used to live in the same building as Canal, so that was fun. That was fun. Also got to spend a lot of quality time with friends who feel like family. I think every year I had allotted like a specific travel journal for Berlin, and this was another attempt at doing that. This is my, I don't know, it's like a journal, a documentation of friend visits, family visits, and I was at a very low point in my life at this time, so I think visitors were my saving grace. Like every month, I think there was someone visiting me, which was either friends, it was my family's first time visiting as well, and I documented a lot of them here because it gave me a lot of incentive to be hopeful for what's to come. I think when you're deep in a depressive state, I mean, I'm no therapist and I don't usually open up about this, but around this time, I was feeling very depressed and unsure of what my future is, which looking back felt kind of normal because it was my first year living in a foreign city and I had no clue if I would continue on. And my career was also pretty much kind of in the rocks at the time. I think it's pretty obvious that you watch my videos and you're like, oh, she's probably thriving in her career. But this was a very difficult adjustment period for me because I was starting to figure out what I really wanted to do and what was possible. And I could determine some of that, but not all of that. So it was really complicated. And by way of journaling, I was obviously able to kind of combat that and channel my creativity. I mean, I shared a lot of these online as well. And I also, yeah, this was my mom's visit, my sister's visit. Also got to enjoy a little bit of the warmer period. So I took myself out on Sunday dates. Looking back, I think I was really in the trenches of being afraid to be alone, which is super ironic because I love being alone and I love living alone, and it took me a while to get to this point. But yeah, this traveler's notebook insert is one of the few ones I still salvage from the time because I needed to be reminded of this period of my life and how I had to experience it in order for me to move forward and to be able to appreciate where I am right now in my own journey. Fast forward to more recent years, around 2024, I think I had really established this routine of everyday journaling, and that's what you'll see here. This is my Hobonichi Techo, which you all know and love. And this was actually my first year documenting like this, like daily. And I think it came with the fact that how interesting is it that it really affects my overall life. Like how my life is what journal I end up using. So around this time, I had moved into an apartment that had a longer term lease, around 2 years. And because I didn't have to worry about moving too much, and I figured I would have a routine for a really long period of time, I think that journaling habit definitely came in clutch and came in handy. I know it's cliche, but just because I had a huge table around that time, I also had a journaling corner, a workspace that was dedicated enough that I could journal and work there, then it became easier for me to just document regularly. I mean, I could share on and on about how much I love this system. It's one of the few things that has been consistent in my journaling routine, and it still is up to this day. Last but not least, I want to share with you this particular project that I have been excited to document about, and I thought long and hard on how to document about this. So this little album documents my move to this particular apartment. This is my first big girl apartment, aka I get to design, furnish, and set it up in a way that is for me, and I've been really enjoying this journey. I wanted to document it without having to write things down, so I thought of a simple solution. I thought to just use my Instax printer, print photos out, and write captions. It's kind of like having a baby book, but the baby is my apartment. And, you know, document about my first few things, like first visitors, setting up flowers, having my first breakfast here. I still have a lot of things that I've added slowly, from photos of friends from housewarming and also during my brother's visit. Small improvements, you know, winter, my first time experiencing things in this apartment, the food I've prepared, the cake I baked for my birthday. These are small things, but they matter so much to me, and I'm really happy that it's documented here. So I guess this is saved the best for last. I hope you enjoyed looking through these journals with me. It is definitely a very personal thing to be able to document life in a new city, and whichever way you do it, or try to immortalize certain things, or try to remember certain moments in your own journey, I'd love for you to tell me in the comments how that was been. Maybe for others it's vlogging, others it's writing, or just keeping a photo diary. I think it goes without saying that journaling is a huge integral part of my life, because it has allowed me to really see the world differently and be able to appreciate where I am now because of everything that I've experienced. But yeah, it was fun leafing through these notebooks with you. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you again, Squarespace, for sponsoring today's video. Let me know in the comments which ones you found the most interesting, and I hope to see you on the next one. Always be creating. Bye!